Want to welcome our special guest, Raven, who has a documentary coming out on November 18th on Amazon Prime, which is really cool, called Nevermore, The Raven Effect. How you doing?
Good. Terrible lighting. I can't get my lighting this shit right, but there we go.
No, you're fine. Do you want to kick it off, Dave?
Well, I mean, I just watched a documentary a couple days ago, and there's so many different things to talk about. I mean, it really goes heavily into ECW, but also your life before ECW. A lot of things, that people don't know about your, childhood stuff and the effects of professional wrestling after the glory days are over. And, one of the things that, if you have things that you look back on when it comes to wrestling, are there regrets or lessons that you might want to give younger wrestlers going through your experience on things to avoid or things to do more or things to learn? I mean,
so many regrets. Anybody who says they don't have regrets is full of shit. I got millions of regrets. There's things I'm happy where I'm at. Don't get me wrong. I'm very content with my life, as content as I've ever been. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't have changed things along the way. And one of the things I would have found a way to get over my insecurity much sooner, because my insecurity led to my egotism. Anybody who's egotistical is just insecure. I mean, that's scientific fact, but I convinced myself that I wasn't, insecure, which is ridiculous. But, I would have went to a psychiatrist earlier or a psychologist earlier, probably, if I had to go back and tell myself. I think everybody should spend time on a couch, frankly. It's very liberating to talk to a therapist and to be able to bare your soul and to, to offer up all your inner demons, and look for a way to get around them, instead of just suffering with them.
When you talk about demons and everything like that, obviously you went through in meeting wrestlers and being around wrestling, especially in the era that you were in, there were a lot of tragedies. And what do you think? I mean, as far as do you think there's anything other than perhaps luck that or things that you figured out early enough that you avoided being one of those tragedies, because you were around a lot of people who ended up being those tragedies?
I was too stupid to die. No, I don't know. I was a smart addict, though. I always had a surplus of pills, so I would never run out and go through withdrawals, which is a nightmare. Which is not advocating to which isn't something I'd recommend to anybody else. I don't know how anybody could be a drug addict in this day and age, with the supply scarcity, and the hard, it used to be so easy to get, opiates. And because we abused it, then now people can't, it's much harder for people today to be addicts, I guess. But that's not what you're looking for. I think I was stupid, full of enough bravado that I felt I was above, dying in that stupid a death, and I never really, and I stayed at an even keel. My dose was really high on drugs, but I stayed at the same level, so it wasn't like I was going crazy, until the ecstasy, that got real crazy. But for the most part, I stayed at an even keel, at the same level. So my body was used to it, as opposed to when Sandman overdoses because he hadn't shot up an Oxycontin before, he wanted to shoot up the heavy dose and he OD'd, which is in the movie. Well, not him ODing, that's not in the movie, but the story of him ODing is.
Yeah. When
The most one of the more powerful moments in the movie, I thought, was when you talked about your dad a little bit, and how as a grown-up, still a young man, but a grown-up, you had this realization that you wanted to write him a letter, and in that letter you were mending fences or something because maybe you'd gotten into an argument, and you told him that you loved him, but there was also this thing out there where he had never said that to you, and that kind of lingered. And I think, at least as far as I remember in the movie, he didn't say it. Like, he acknowledged the letter, but he didn't say it. And one of the things about this movie, I mean, you're dealing with lots of different things. Like, it talks about your entire life, and that relationship between father and son, it is such a powerful one. And when I watched that, I kind of came out of it like, wow, like that relationship between father and son connects, like Field of Dreams, like that movie Field of Dreams, like that is the theme to that movie. That is such a powerful theme. And it seemed, obviously there's a little bit of a discomfort in mentioning that story, but is there anything out of that story that you took, being able to say that in the movie and, be public with that feeling?
Yeah. I think the overall thing I want to pass on, I think, from it is that mental illness is not something that should be shoved away into a corner. If you have a broken arm, you get a cast put on it. If you have a broken brain, then you need to get medication for it, or you need to do therapy, to fix it. You don't do, if you injure yourself, you're still going to get physical therapy. You're not just going to let it heal on its own, or if you are, it's not going to heal the right way. And the same thing with psychological damage. Psychological damage is so much worse than physical damage, and it goes with, as part of my wrestling psychology too, is that like I can punch somebody in the face and it's going to hurt, but if I steal their girlfriend, it's going to they're going to be shut down for months. And I tried to always use that in wrestling as that same sense of psychology of the pain. And that's why a lot of my promos were cathartic to me. And then the father thing, my dad, he wrote me a letter back saying that he loved me, but I think he might have said it once or twice after that. We were never close, but I always admired him. I really admired him. I always wanted to be funny like him. And I didn't used to be funny as a kid, and I tried so hard to be funny. And there's nothing worse than somebody who's unfunny. But because of it, I taught myself to be funny, and eventually became one of the funnier guys that in the locker room. But it also, his sense of humor was all Don Rickles style, and so what it did was the target of its insults were always me. I knew he didn't mean it, but because he didn't say "I love you," and because of all the humor directed at me, I thought it was funny, and I thought I was smart enough to know that he doesn't mean it, but it still destroyed my sense of self-worth. And it which led me to be egotistical, which led me to the history of the narcissistic personality disorder. And it led me to always trying to be the smartest guy in the room. And not only did I have to be the smartest guy in the room, even if I wasn't, I had to make sure everybody knew that, which is completely annoying. Nobody wants to hear somebody telling everybody how much smarter he is than them. But that's the only way I knew, until I got therapy.
When you go through, your wrestling career took a lot of different twists and turns, and obviously the most famous is the Raven character, and you really did a total, I don't know, 180 or whatever you would call it. I mean, you started with this Scotty the Body, in different territories, but Oregon was probably your first full-time territory, and then you ended up in WWE. What was it like in the sense of you were really good as far as a wrestler and entertainer from the first time I saw you, which was probably the Oregon territory, and then you went to WWE, and at the time, basically, and you could kind of correct me on this, I got the sense that they just figured you're too small, but you're really smart, so we're going to make you a producer, which was a good job, but not the job you wanted at all.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So now, what was it like in the sense of, I mean, you weren't a small guy, you were a bodybuilder type guy, but they wanted like a monster sized guys.
Yeah, they wanted 280. Yeah, I was 220, and I was the smallest guy on a national stage, other than the 1-2-3 Kid, who was designed. His gimmick was that he was the smallest guy, and everybody else was 280. Even the guys who were 5'9" were 280. I just couldn't carry that kind of weight back then.
That wouldn't have been good for you if you did. So now you were there.
But I would have done it, though. That's the thing. I was taking steroids way before I got into the wrestling business because I wanted to look like a bodybuilder, which I didn't have the genetics for it. But, I got the Jewish genetics, which are great for brain power, but not so good for physical appearance.
So you're there in WWE and have a good job, and you chucked it essentially because you wanted to be a performer. How did you come up with the Raven idea when you came to ECW with Paul Heyman?
I came up with it. I was talking with DDP one day, who's been very helpful in my career and a very close friend of mine for all these years. And we were talking, and he's like, you got to stop being a chicken shit heel. And I go, but I like being a chicken shit heel. It gets heat. There's nuance. There's character development. It makes it much more interesting. And he goes, yeah, but nobody's buying it. All the main bookers who were, I forget who was booking WCW at the time,
was it maybe Watts?
No, Watts was already fired.
We're talking later. Right.
Yeah.
It'll be probably Kevin Sullivan. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and Kevin Sullivan was a small guy, but he always played a tough guy, Paige goes, you got to be a tough guy. I go, but, I don't want to. He goes, there's no subtlety and nuance. He goes, yeah, but if you want a job, you're working for a company, that's what you got to do. And I go, all right, I'll be a tough guy. I mean, it's not that I was afraid of portraying one. I was a U.S. Marine. I've held my own in the numerous bouncing jobs before I got into wrestling. It's just everybody's a tough guy, and in the world of tough guys, I didn't feel like my toughness qualified, with guys like Steiner and Haku, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, but I go, I guess I'll be a tough guy then. And Paige goes, so that was when he pointed me in that direction, and he goes, because I wore a leather jacket all the time. I wore Doc Martens. I wore ripped up jeans and T-shirts. And I wore basically Raven wear, the WWF and WWE when I was working. And in fact, part of the project, I was made the HR ladies project to get me into a suit and tie. Work in the office when I was working in the office as associate producer. And Paige goes, you look like those Red Hot Chili Pepper dudes in the movie Point Break. And he goes, you ought to do something like that. And I was like, and he gave me the idea, and then I figured it out, put it all together. And then one day I was just sitting there and I go, I need a name for this character. Let's see. I thought of The Crow, the movie The Crow. I thought that's a good reference point. His name's Eric Draven, Raven. Quote the Raven nevermore. Boom, I got a name and a catchphrase in 30 seconds. Like that required no work. I was like, this is awesome. And then I put together an outfit. And originally I tried on a flannel T-shirt with the sleeves cut off, but I looked like Big Josh. And so I was like, that's not the way. I got a tie of flannel around my waist, put on a concert tee. And I know it's important to have different ring jackets, because you want to have a variety, because to be a star, you got to look like a star. And so you want to have a multitude of ring jackets, because then it makes you look like you're richer and more well-to-do and more style. It makes you look more like a star. But I knew Raven would never change his leather jacket because that's not his style. He wouldn't care to, he just wears ripped up jacket. So that's why I went with the concert tees, because that way I could have a different T-shirt every week, so that would carry the same purpose. I always told people to be a star, you got to look like a star. And to me, I had to find a way to make it to look like a star by not looking like a star. If that makes sense.
Well, it's the distinctive thing, because it's funny because I have talked to people And I go like, one of the keys to being a star to the people is to look like a star, and that doesn't mean Ric Flair, although Ric Flair looked like a star, but it means it means being distinctive. Like when guys dress up nicely, but they look like everybody else, that's not a star. You're just one of everybody else.
Right. Correct.
You know, and then people go like, you know, like, oh, you want people to look like a star, but you say John Cena or Steve Austin. I go, because they look like stars, because they're distinctive. They're not dressed like everybody else. It's their character. If the key is the character, it's not like expensive clothes. It's the character, right?
Right, but you have to, in most cases, if you have one ring jacket, like I always used to say this, use this as a reference, as an example. Ric Flair had a dozen ring jackets, right, or at least a dozen. Terry Taylor had one ring jacket that was really, really nice, same kind of style, but he wore it 1 week and then he wore it the next week, and then by the third week you're like, I've already seen it. Yep. You know, it loses its star power to it. You know what I mean? For an example.
Mm. Now, when you did you have any trouble selling it to Paul Heyman, you know, the character, or did he go for it immediately?
I actually had DDP call him because they're good friends. That's a DDP helped me with that too, and he called him up and talked to him and sold him on the idea. But Paul thought it was going to be like just a grunge version of Johnny Polo. Like he thought it was going to be a chicken shit heel comedy character. And when I came up to do my first promo at the studio, he saw it and he got the character more than I got the character in the beginning. Like he understood exactly what I was going for, but I wasn't even sure what I was going for. I mean, I knew what I was going for, but I didn't realize how deep I was going to take it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So now you created and the documentary goes through this. You know, you created the storyline with the summer camp and everything, with Tommy Dreamer being your best friend who, you know, when you were like young and kind of like that backstory.
Well, I wanted a backstory because originally I was just going to go there for 3 months and then I was hopefully going to Smoky Mountain. So I wanted to have a backstory so we'd have a hot introduction so we could just get this feud right off the ground. And that's why I came up with the idea. And Beulah even wasn't in the very beginning. She came along a little bit later. But yeah, the summer camp thing I came up with, and I sold Paul on it because I was like, this is going to make it so much more interesting, you know, because it's psychological pain. Once again, it's not physical pain, you know, even though I would physically beat him up, it's the psychological damage I did to him that would, you know, and the fact he could never beat me, even though ironically, he actually beat me in the very first match we had together before. And I forget where that was, Jim Thorpe or somewhere. He actually beat me in the first match we had.
So now, when it comes to like the one thing when I'm watching the documentary now in 2025 and I'm watching those ECW clips and everything like that, it's like it's so different of a product. And I mean, it was different of a product than
it's visceral. It's visceral.
Yeah, it was different from the other companies even then, and your character was more different than most of the characters. Like your character was really something unique, and it really, like watching it now, really stood out. I mean, as far as just something, you know, like it kind of exposed to me modern storylines because there's nothing like this one, and this one, you know, it had so much more legs than, hey, let's do like a 3-match program. You win one, I win the third, and then we whatever in the third one, right? Or we do a DQ and we come back and it's over, right? You know, we've seen the match, we've seen it 3 times. We don't need to see it again. And so many times, like in wrestling today, someone will have a match, and it's even a great match, and then they book it for a rematch, and people will go like, I already seen it. Can't you do it again? And you did your thing for years, and you know,
nobody got sick of it.
I don't remember. Yeah, no, I never remember thinking like, oh, this has run its course, because you made sure it didn't run its course.
Yeah, that's the art form. That's what wrestling is. When it's done right, that to me is pro wrestling. Like I grew up in WWF until I was like 9 or 10, and I'm glad I ended up moving to Florida because we got Florida Championship Wrestling, which was more storyline driven. It wasn't just like you said, the 3-4 week program with Bruno, or I come in and interfere in your match, and now we're having a feud for 3 weeks. It's so much more than that, and that's where I got that from, I think, I must have been where I got it from. And I just always believed in storytelling, because like I said, psychological pain is much worse than the physical pain.
Did you have any favorite angles like in Florida when you were a kid that like kind of resonated with you?
I actually liked when they took Billy Graham out into the desert and they staked him to the ground, and Billy Graham said he withstood the vipers and the scorpions for 7 days as he laid out there. And he hates that period of his career. Billy does. Because I told him about it. I said, I love that. I want him to sign that picture I had of it that I found in Florida at the office when I was there, when I was in Florida Championship Wrestling. I saw a picture of it. And I told him I would love to have him sign it. He's like, I don't want to sign that. He goes, I'll give you a new picture. I'm like, I don't want a new one. I just wanted that one because I had fond memories of it.
So now, like, you go through, you go to WCW from ECW, and the story that you told, and I mean, I remember the way when it went down with that meeting and everything. There's a meeting, and essentially, Eric goes, anyone who's unhappy, you can quit. And you said, basically, okay, I want to quit.
Yeah, it was actually more exacting. It was because Raven, if you're unhappy with the company, there's the door. He actually didn't address to everybody; he just addressed me. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing: is I was wrong for speaking to the newspapers about how miserable I was. And the irony was I wasn't even close to being as miserable as I'd get in the WWE.
Yeah.
Now
later when you were in WWE, the one thing that I remember, because I know you talked in the movie essentially about how, it was, you really thought you could go there and do something, and it didn't happen. They kind of had you at a certain
broke
level.
Me.
Yeah, and you weren't going to, they had decided no matter what you did. The thing that I remember, and it was about you and Taz and Dreamer to an extent too, is you would be over because of the following that ECW had, and you were stars in ECW. And it was, I almost felt during that period that they had decided that ECW is beneath us. But if you're a star because of ECW, it doesn't count, even if our fans react to you. And it was almost like you were in a no-win situation. Like if you got over, they said, well, you got over in a way that doesn't count. And if you didn't get over, it'd be like, look, our fans don't watch ECW. It doesn't matter. So
it also didn't help that I had left on such that Vince and them. I'd left with heat from the last time when I was Johnny Polo. That I left with heat. That didn't help matters any either, and that was a lot of my fault.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back, do you think that you could have been, I don't know what the word is, but like more conciliatory when you would leave companies or anything like that, or just
it wasn't that I did anything wrong. I mean, it was more. It wasn't that I left on bad terms. It was A, that I left, B, that I had Shane out till 4 a.m. every night.
Yeah.
Which everybody thought, oh, you're kissing his ass trying to get over. And I'm like, no, this is burying me. But, I was too busy worrying about my partying instead of my career because I wasn't having much of a career. I was working in the office and I was Johnny Polo,
Yeah.
Do you still have any contact with Shane over the years?
No, it was surprising when I came back, he really had no time for me.
Really?
Yeah, I really was surprised by that.
Maybe he got warned by his dad before they brought you back.
Yeah, maybe. That makes a lot of sense, though. Yeah. I didn't think about that.
I actually wanted to quickly go back to the ECW stuff because some of this documentary is really like, and I'm relating it to like a director's commentary. Like if you buy a DVD of a movie, sometimes they'll have a director and maybe an actor speak about the scenes as they're ongoing. And when you were talking about the angles, it would have you and Dreamer, and then people, and there's some stuff with the Sandman, and you guys aren't like doing a director's commentary, but there would be a scene, and then you would kind of describe the clip and what was behind it and what was in the storytelling. And I thought that was really cool, and I think fans of big fans of ECW will really enjoy that stuff. But the question is really, so you worked two different stints in, well, WWF and then WWE, also WCW. But I imagine, like, by far,
I couldn't hold down a job. I worked there. That's the thing, is I kept looking for. It's part of my nature that I had FOMO, fear of missing out. I was always trying to go up one more level. Get to, this will get me content. This will get me content.
But my guess is that more so than anything WWF or WCW related, all anyone wants to talk to you about is ECW, probably, is my guess. And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But that was such a big part of your career, but the smallest of all the companies nationally. But I'm guessing that's what people want to talk to you about when they see you on the streets.
I haven't been like a regular I haven't got that kind of recognition in a number of years. Every month and every week, every day, every month, every year, you're off TV. Your value to your star power drops, and your ability to be recognized, which is, to me, is great. I prefer not to be recognized. You know what I mean? I don't need that adulation. Even though that's part of the reason I got into business, because I wanted the adulation of perfect strangers. Even though I knew that wasn't a fix, subconsciously, I knew it wasn't a fix, I still wanted it, And, but no, people talk about all kinds of stuff. You would think that they would talk more about ECW, but I get all kinds of weird questions, like, I don't usually get recognized other than, when somebody does, they're just like, thanks for, it's more, I guess because of my age, it's more thanks for what you did. Thanks for making my childhood, or thanks for, whatever. But, yeah, I guess, I don't know. It's been so long since it's been like, on the top of my head, where I'm getting recognized everywhere I go, that it just doesn't, I don't really recall which would be more. I would imagine, it seems like ECW should be more, but then I got a lot of recognition. I had a lot of. It's funny. I thought my WWE run was horrible, but it really wasn't. Looking back on it, I won the hardcore belt like 39 times, But those matches stuck with people, And the reason it's like, I know people consider it garbage wrestling, but I don't think it was garbage wrestling the way I did it, because I had psychology. You told a story with it. Babyface gets a shine, heel gets heat, babyface makes a comeback. It wasn't just I hit you, you hit me, bump, 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 bump,
What, as far as like, one of the things that's really graphic in the movie is the price that you and so many of the other wrestlers in ECW paid, as far as, between the effects of the partying and the injury of the body toll,
and the unprotected chair shots.
The unprotected chair shots, yeah. Now when you look back, do you believe the unprotected chair shots did a number on you?
Yeah, I think it did some damage. I definitely got some brain damage. So did all the drugs I took. I think Sabu was the smartest. The way he threw the chair, you can still get a chair shot without the smartest. One of my favorite things anybody's ever done in wrestling was the way Sabu would throw the chair at you. So you get the big rattle, because it makes a big noise when it bounces off your hands, hitting it with your, and it hits your head and your hands. But it doesn't hurt, and it doesn't cause any damage, I don't think, because he's not throwing it that hard. You couldn't throw a chair that way hard enough. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, taking the chair shots the way we took them was just ridiculous,
Yeah.
Yeah,
some of them are scary as hell. If you look back, and you look at them now, like just absolutely, like it makes you cringe. Some of them, yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
and it was kind of a macho thing then, in the sense of like now, I mean, like not now, but there's ways to protect yourself. But the key in the ECW days is that you didn't protect yourself.
Well, there's an art form to taking a chair shot. The art form is as he's hitting you, you're bumping. So that if you time it perfectly, then as the chair is hitting your head, making the noise, you're on your way down to take the bump. And so you never get hit. You don't get clobbered with it as much as you still get clobbered with it, but it's not as bad by any stretch of the imagination. And there's an art form to taking a chair shot, but the people don't know it, which is, it's probably better that they just don't use them. Or I guess, I don't know if they do use them. I don't watch wrestling anymore. I stopped watching during the Alliance Angle when they did that Alliance Angle and they buried everybody except RVD.
Oh yeah.
And
so that's over 2 decades.
Yeah. And that's when I stopped watching. I got disenchanted and I just didn't have it in me to, plus, I'm also a completist. I have to watch everything, because I have to know all the stories. And it's just too much wrestling. I couldn't watch that much. And I've already seen and done anything. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff out there that I haven't seen yet or I haven't done yet. But for the most part, I don't think there is. I mean, we ran the gamut.
One of the things. I mean, how valuable was it to your career to do? A territory like Oregon, where you're out there, 5-6 nights a week, playing in front of the same fans each week, where you can't just do a routine and do the same thing night after night after night, which in WWE and probably in so many companies, you're performing maybe once a year in front of the people live. You're on TV a lot, but the point, you can't just do the same exact, like WWE, when the guys would come here during that same period, they would come here maybe once every other month, and they would do the same exact match that they did the night before. For 2-3 weeks, you're doing the exact same match.
Sure.
Similar time. You know what I mean? It's the same match. Whereas when you work a territory where you're in front of the people once a week, you have to, first of all, you have to advance storylines and all that to keep it interesting, but also just the idea that you have to be more versatile, I think.
Absolutely. I think it's a great learning place. It's why so many people went there. It was a territory for people that were either coming up or going back or the end of their career after they've been a star and on the way down. And I have to give so much credit to the grappler. Lynn Denton was such a smart wrestler, such a smart guy to the business. And he really, he wouldn't teach me as in, I'll give you a lesson, kid. He would make me ask the questions and find out my own, and I would have to go find my own answers. Like one day I said I wanted to be in a cage match. He goes, all right, great. He goes, what are you going to do the week after? I go, I don't know. He goes, I'll figure it out. So I figure it out. I talk to him the next day or the next couple of days, and I go, yeah, this is where I have a cage match, and then I can do this afterwards. He goes, what are you going to do before the cage match? I go, I don't know. He goes, figure it out. And he would teach me that way and force me to learn on my own. And I learned so much from him, more than any other wrestler in my career. And he doesn't get the credit he deserves. And so I just want to put that over and his book's really, really good too.
It was a good book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good book. So it's just a natural storyteller.
Yeah. Well, what made you do this? Because one of the things when I watched the documentary, I mean, so many documentaries, most documentaries, when I watch wrestling documentaries, my reaction probably would be yours too, is there's some truth here, but this is so full of shit. You know what I mean? And with yours, it was I think you went out of your way to be overly honest, almost like it was a catharsis. Was that, is that right?
Yeah, I told her when Jordy Day, the director, emailed me, and then we started talking on the phone, he said he wanted to make a documentary about me. And the reason he wanted to, in case you're going to ask that question next, is he heard me on Steve Austin's podcast and thought I sounded interesting, and thought I'd make a good documentary subject. And he said it was because of how I saw wrestling as an art form, not just as a sport, but as an art form, which I do. And but yeah, so I just lost my train of thought. What's the question again?
It was It was about the making of the documentary.
Right. Yeah, I told him, I said, I want it to be warts and all. I said, I don't want this to be a rah-rah piece because, I wanted to write a book, but I was just too lazy and I didn't want to have somebody else write my book because you still have, if I wanted the book to be what I wanted it to be, I would have to reread it and edit it and keep rereading it and letting him edit it. And or just do it myself, which is what I planned to do. But I just got too lazy, and this came along. I was like, this is perfect. It's not like I'm doing a reality show where people are coming into my home, other than for once or twice for quick, to film stuff, as opposed to I'm not exposing my daily life to the cameras, but I am exposing my past, which is what I wanted to do. Because I feel like it could be inspirational to other people with mental illness. I feel like I wanted it to help explain myself and me to my friends and family and my fans, more. I wanted them to understand me better, because I'm a polarizing figure. We've gone back and forth before, so I know that. I mean, it's my nature. But I wanted it to. This was just a perfect opportunity because he agreed with me that he wanted it to be that as well. So it all worked out.
From what I understand, and this is from I think you were on Ariel Helwani's show. You've really gotten into MMA. Is that right?
Yeah, huge.
Yeah. What is there? Is there a reason for that? I mean, I remember when we used to talk, and this is when MMA was in its infancy, and you had told me you wanted to be an MMA announcer at the time.
Yeah, I did, but it never got an opportunity. And what are you going to do? I think MMA is so fascinating. I really think that people, like if somebody would want to be managed by me, I would help them. I think I could help get them over, no matter what their record is. Even if their record is a crappy record, I guarantee I could get them over. Because I just teach them pro wrestling techniques, you know what I mean? And that's the only thing it's missing. Although it's also what keeps it separate. So you don't want a whole lot of that. But if somebody chose to be a heel and understood it, like Colby Covington was a great heel, but unfortunately he took it too far.
He just tried to shock you. I don't think he really understood it.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. He didn't understand it. And he felt like, being a heel, you got to go push it. But you can only push so far before it's turned to heat. If you get the wrong kind of heat, it's changed to channel heat. Yeah. And, but yeah, I really think that I always told Bobby Lashley, I think it was like a semi-running gag between us. Every time I'd see him, I'd go, whenever you're ready, I'm ready to manage you. I think it just annoyed him more than anything, but I don't know why Bobby didn't take it more into a pro wrestling style.
I think that a lot of the guys it's funny because a lot of the guys I think from pro wrestling when they started doing MMA, I thought that they would do that, and Shamrock kind of did, but most of them, they get so far away from it that they don't even realize what made them a star in the first place when they go into MMA. You know what I mean? They try to be so reserved. Even Punk, because Punk, was such a great talker. When he was in MMA, he could talk, but it wasn't. What's the word I'm looking for? I think with Punk, maybe it was just that he kind of knew he wasn't a great fighter. And it's easy as a pro wrestler, you can talk like you're a great pro wrestler and really do the promo. With MMA, I think that he realized that I can't go in there and talk like I do as a pro wrestler because it doesn't exactly work at my level of fighting. Maybe, I don't know, because I expected him to go in there and be like the greatest MMA talker there ever was, and he shied away. He totally shied away.
I think if he would have went to Bellator, he would have been more like I told him when I ran into him a couple of years ago. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I told him, I said, you should really I'm really happy for you and for your career. My only problem with it was you should have went to Bellator. And he's like, well, with what they offered me in UFC, I couldn't turn it down.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, but you've made so much money. I'm like, you should have turned it down, and because they would have given you tomato cans in Bellator until you built yourself up. You know what I mean? And but I didn't push the issue with them. But that's my thought. But my other thought is the reason people don't do pro wrestling is It's really hard to be a baby face, to be a character baby face like Dusty Rhodes, to draw money. But nobody wants to be a heel in real life. Nobody wants to be a heel in pro wrestling. Like, I was one of the only people who genuinely preferred being booed than cheered. But most people don't. But I was just more comfortable with it because of my personality. But most people don't want to be booed, and most people don't want people to hate them, and that's the problem with why I think there's no heels in MMA is because nobody wants to be hated.
Yeah. There were some scenes of you working with MLW. Court Bauer is in the video, and I think you're giving advice to an angle featuring Jacob Fatu, who is now in WWE. And I was wondering, do you have people coming to you for advice, or reaching out and wondering how that they could tackle this one thing that maybe they would try and get your expertise about?
No, not so much. I mean, people at that kind of level want to do their own thing, and people at a lower level just don't have. Like I always said that I don't mind teaching. I like teaching, but I like teaching advanced students because I couldn't have the patience to teach beginners. But I also feel like I can help advanced people go from level, like if they're on a B level, I can help them get to an A level. But I don't know. I mean, it all depends. People are, when I take bookings, I don't take as many now because of my sleep disorder, and plus the last few years I've been out of the business more or less because in 2022 I had both knees replaced. In 2023 I had my shoulder replaced. 2024 spinal stenosis flared up. And so I really didn't take a lot of bookings since 2021, and that was the COVID. So really, you're looking at before 2019 that I was even, on the road very often, more than, 6 times a year.
What, you talk about like the physical price that you pay, like what, essentially you talked about, like how long have you had the sleep disorder and what kind of, got that, do you have like a thing where that came from or anything?
The sleep disorder, I don't know. It just popped up. I started waking up and I was exhausted, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night like a dozen times, 15, 20 times a night. And then so when I'd wake up for good, I would be just as tired as when I went to bed. And so that's been a problem for 20 plus years now. And then I got the early onset Parkinson's, which the only reason I even brought it up, it made it public, because it was really nobody's business, but the only reason I made it public is because I have a tremor, and it looks weird having a tremor and not having any explanation for it. I don't want people just speculating, that whatever. But it's really early in the onset. I've had it for like 10 years. So, and it hasn't really progressed very far. So I'm hoping that it doesn't progress very far at all. You know what I mean? But that I would imagine my chair shots to the, I would think all my damage is due to chair shots to the head and drug abuse.
When you were going through that period, I mean, was the drug abuse thing, was that, do you think that was just the nature of your personality, or was that something that the what's the word I'm looking for, the atmosphere of wrestling, or a combination of both?
No, yes and no. I would have been a drug addict anyway, I think, or an alcoholic. The atmosphere definitely helped, but it was also something I was good at. Like I was good at doing drugs. I was, better than most, and which is a horrible thing to want to be better at. But it was something I was really good at, so it was something I did, and which is sad. It's really pathetic if you really think about it. But that's the choices I made at the time. Best choices. I made the best choices I could at the time.
When you look back, I mean, do you look back and have these like, oh man, like these were the glory days of my life, or do you look back and go, oh my God, how did I do this? Why did I do this? Or is it something in between?
Both. It's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't live in the past. I really don't. I like to me, like I don't even think of the you know, of all that stuff unless somebody brings it up. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's like when I see my buddies that I haven't seen in years. You know, we start telling war stories, and then it's kind of like, whoa, what that was idiotic. You know, what an idiot I was, or wow, what a party that was. You know what I mean? But then I don't think about it. You know, it's just not something that it comes into my purview.
As we wind this down and before we let you go, what do you want your fans to take away from the documentary? What kind of response are you looking for the folks who are pretty eager to watch this thing?
I want them to be entertained first and foremost. You know, and I think they will be. I think it's a really fascinating documentary, and not just because I'm the subject. I think the director did a phenomenal job with it. I want that. I want them to seek help if they have mental illness, and I want people to understand me better. You know, and realize that that I'm everybody's unique. You know, tolerance and patience you got to have for people. You know.
Is there anything else you would like to promote other than the documentary's out next week, Amazon Prime, Nevermore, The Raven Effect? Anything else that you got going on?
I got some indie shows coming up. I got one in Milwaukee on December 6th, whatever the Saturday is. For Dave Harrow, Milwaukee or Waukesha Blizzard Brawl.
The annual Blizzard Brawl thing that he does. Yeah.
And then I'm supposed to be at WrestleCade. I think it's WrestleCade, the thing on Thanksgiving weekend. But I haven't got my plane ticket yet, so we'll see. But I'm supposed to be at that. And then I don't really have any other bookings for a while because I wanted to take time off because this has been a pretty. You know, I'm 61, and with the sleep disorder, it takes me days to recover from going on the road. And not because I party or anything, but just the schedule gets changed and everything like that. And it just, it exhausts me, and I have to work my system back into a normal routine again. And there's something to be said for routine. I mean, it really is. Like, I used to love being on the road. I used to love the difference. Every day would be different, like every new experience. And now I'm really content being at home, so that's another thing. I just like being at home.
Aside from like MMA, do you have any other hobbies or things that you like to watch?
Yeah, I've been watching a bunch of anime lately. There's a show called Dan to Dan that's really good. And I watch a lot of stuff like alien documentaries and Bigfoot type stuff, which I could get into, but it's not anyone we want to talk about now, or nor do we have the time.
Brian,
but it's really I was gonna say it's really a fascinating subject, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say Brian Alvarez does a show called After Dark that he can get you on and talk about that stuff all show long. That's a show on this network.
Yeah, tell him to give me a call.
All right, Dave, anything else?
I just, I would recommend the thing, because the one thing when I was watching is like, for me, it's like, and I think a lot of people, it's like life goes in a certain way and change is very gradual. And usually you don't notice it because it is so gradual. So I went back and, and I remember all this stuff from 27, 28 years ago, the heyday of ECW and everything. And I remember it well, but actually watching it now through today's eyes and you look back, it is, the wrestling business has changed so much. And there really is some really, just the gripping nature of your character. I mean, like that is something that's missing in wrestling right now, is the characters, because even the people who have characters, they're one-dimensional. in a lot of ways.
That was what I planned. That was the one thing I wanted with my character was I wanted it to be three-dimensional. I wanted it to be where you wouldn't understand the character's actions. You may not agree with them, but you understood why he did it. Which makes it all the more of a. It's like when Bret Hart turned heel. And he only turned heel because he said he was supposed to be a babyface, and you stupid fans wouldn't cheer for him when Shawn Michaels was, and they cheer for Shawn Michaels, who's a degenerate in his mind. And what was so great about it was if he was a real babyface, if his character truly was, he would have walked away, walked off into the sunset. But the fact that he kept wanting to stick around and push the fact that he should be cheered made him so despicable, and it was great. It was riveting. And it all goes back to psychology. It's psychological pain is so much better than physical.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So much worse.
Yeah, right.
I really want to thank you for doing this. This was great. The documentary is really entertaining. Again, one more time, Nevermore, The Raven Effect, Amazon Prime, November 18th. I think people who listen to this show will really enjoy it. So thanks for jumping on with us.
Yep. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
Yep.
All right, for Raven and Dave, I'm Garrett. To everybody, thanks for watching and listening.